Big corporations often promise progress, innovation, and change, but what happens when their actions leave a trail of destruction? From environmental catastrophes to financial collapses and scandals, these companies have caused unimaginable harm and often walked away with little accountability. Stick around, because today we're uncovering 13 companies that got away with murder. You won't believe the shocking details. Corporate power can shape economies, influence governments, and change lives, but it can also destroy them. The companies we're about to discuss have left lasting scars on individuals, communities, and even the planet. Despite lawsuits, settlements, and public outrage, they managed to evade full accountability, proving that sometimes profit outweighs justice. Let's dive into their stories. Number 1. Union Carbide and Dow Chemical Bhopal gas tragedy. In 1984, a toxic gas leak at Union Carbide's pesticide plant in Bhopal, India, exposed over 500,000 people to deadly methyl isocyanate gas. The immediate death toll exceeded 3,000, but the tragedy didn't stop there. Over the years, an estimated 15,000 people lost their lives due to health complications, with countless others suffering from chronic illnesses and birth defects. Despite the scale of the disaster, Union Carbide settled with the Indian government for just $470 million, a figure widely criticized as grossly inadequate. Dow Chemical, which acquired Union Carbide in 2001, denied responsibility for further cleanup or compensation, leaving the site contaminated to this day. Former CEO Warren Anderson evaded legal accountability, and victims continued to seek justice decades later. Number 2. DuPont C8 chemical scandal. For decades, DuPont knowingly polluted the environment with perfluorooctanoic acid PFOA, a toxic forever chemical used in Teflon production that does not break down in the environment or human body. Despite being aware of its links to cancer, organ damage, and reproductive harm since the 1960s, DuPont continued using PFOA without informing the public, contaminating water supplies near its West Virginia plant and devastating local communities. The scandal came to light in the 2000s when attorney Rob Bilott uncovered internal documents proving DuPont's decades-long cover-up. A class action lawsuit resulted in a $600 million settlement, but this was minuscule compared to the billions DuPont earned from Teflon products. Critics argue the company avoided real accountability, with only minor reforms imposed and long-term contamination persisting. This scandal remains a glaring example of corporate negligence, with ongoing lawsuits and health concerns highlighting its catastrophic impact. Before we continue, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to light, exposing the hidden truths behind corporate power. Number 3. Enron Corporation accounting fraud and collapse. Enron, once a beacon of innovation on Wall Street, orchestrated one of the largest corporate frauds in history. By manipulating its financial statements, the company hid billions in debt and inflated its revenues, creating a dazzling but hollow image of profitability. This charade unraveled in 2001 when Enron declared bankruptcy, wiping out over $60 billion in shareholder value and leaving thousands of employees with worthless pensions and lost jobs. Top executives Jeffrey Skilling and Andrew Fastow were convicted and sentenced to prison for their roles. But the scandal exposed deep flaws in corporate governance and accounting oversight. Despite these convictions, many argue that the broader financial system failed to learn lasting lessons, as similar governance issues have resurfaced in later corporate collapses. Enron's downfall remains a cautionary tale of unchecked corporate greed and the devastating consequences of prioritizing profits over transparency and ethics. Number 4. FTX Trading Ltd cryptocurrency collapse. FTX, once one of the most prominent cryptocurrency exchanges globally, experienced a dramatic collapse in 2022 that shook the financial world. Led by Sam Bankman-Fried, the company faced allegations of mismanaging customer funds, transferring billions of dollars to its sister firm Alameda Research to cover trading losses. The fallout left investors and customers devastated, with billions in losses unlikely to be recovered. While Bankman-Fried faces fraud charges, the scandal exposed significant regulatory gaps in the rapidly growing cryptocurrency industry, which remains largely unregulated and vulnerable to similar risks. FTX's downfall has become a cautionary tale of unchecked ambition and greed in a financial space that prizes innovation over accountability. Its collapse continues to fuel debates over the need for stronger oversight and protections for investors in the volatile crypto market. Number 5. Theranos Health Tech Fraud. Theranos, founded by Elizabeth Holmes, was once hailed as a revolutionary force in healthcare, promising to transform medical testing with its Edison device. This technology claimed to perform hundreds of accurate blood tests using just a few drops of blood. However, investigations revealed the Edison device was a fraud, delivering unreliable results and endangering patient health. Despite raising billions from high-profile investors, Theranos' claims unraveled, leading to the company's collapse. Holmes and CEO Sunny Balwani were convicted of fraud, highlighting the dangers of Silicon Valley's fake-it-till-you-make-it culture. The scandal not only harmed patients and investors but also exposed systemic flaws in how startups secure funding and evade scrutiny. Theranos remains a powerful reminder of the need for accountability and transparency in the tech and healthcare industries. From deadly spills to global health crises, these companies didn't just make mistakes, they made decisions that changed lives forever. And the shocking part, most of them barely faced consequences. Number 6. Exxon Valdez oil spill. In 1989, the Exxon Valdez oil tanker struck a reef in Alaska's Prince William Sound, spilling approximately 11 million gallons of crude oil into one of the world's most ecologically sensitive areas. The disaster devastated marine life, including thousands of sea otters, seals, and birds, while destroying local fisheries and the livelihoods of surrounding communities. Cleanup efforts were inadequate, leaving long-term ecological scars, with some areas still showing traces of oil decades later. ExxonMobil paid around $1 billion in cleanup costs and settlements, but many critics argued this was a mere fraction of the overall damage caused. Additionally, the company faced accusations of neglecting safety measures that could have prevented the disaster. The Exxon Valdez spill remains one of the most infamous examples of corporate negligence, serving as a sobering reminder of the environmental costs associated with the oil industry's pursuit of profit over precaution. Number 7. Johnson & Johnson talcum powder scandal. For decades, Johnson & Johnson marketed its talcum powder products as safe and essential for families, despite internal documents showing the company had knowledge of asbestos contamination. This carcinogen, linked to ovarian cancer and mesothelioma, posed severe health risks to consumers who use the products regularly. Thousands of lawsuits were filed by individuals who suffered from these diseases, leading to billions of dollars in settlements. However, Johnson & Johnson continued to deny any wrongdoing and still sells talc-based products in certain markets, raising questions about their commitment to consumer safety. Critics argue that the company's settlements, while significant, pale in comparison to the harm caused to countless victims over the years. The talcum powder scandal underscores the tension between corporate profits and the ethical responsibility to protect public health. Number 8. Nestle water exploitation and baby formula controversy. Nestle has been at the center of multiple controversies, with critics accusing the company of exploiting vulnerable populations and ecosystems for profit. In drought-stricken regions, Nestle has been accused of over-extracting groundwater for its bottled water operations, leaving local communities with reduced access to clean water. Additionally, the company aggressively marketed baby formula in developing countries, promoting it as superior to breastfeeding despite health risks associated with improper preparation in areas with limited clean water access. This led to malnutrition and infant deaths in some of the world's poorest regions. Despite widespread criticism and activism against its practices, Nestle continues to thrive financially, often escaping significant legal consequences. The company's actions epitomize the unchecked greed of multinational corporations, and the failure of global regulations to protect vulnerable populations. Number 9. BP Deepwater Horizon oil spill. In 2010, BP's Deepwater Horizon oil rig exploded in the Gulf of Mexico, releasing over 4 million barrels of crude oil into the ocean in the largest marine oil spill in history. The explosion killed 11 workers and unleashed an environmental disaster that devastated ecosystems, marine life, and coastal communities dependent on fishing and tourism. The spill's long-term effects included widespread damage to wildlife habitats, economic hardship for thousands of families, and ongoing environmental degradation. BP ultimately paid over $20 billion in settlements and cleanup costs, the largest corporate fine in U.S. history. But critics argue that this was insufficient compared to the scope of the devastation. Investigations revealed that BP ignored critical safety warnings and implemented cost-cutting measures that contributed to the disaster. The Deepwater Horizon spill stands as a grim reminder of the catastrophic risks of prioritizing profit over safety in high-risk industries. Number 10. Boeing 737 MAX crashes. Boeing's rush to compete with rival Airbus led to the expedited production of the 737 MAX airplanes, resulting in catastrophic consequences. In 2018 and 2019, two separate crashes involving the 737 MAX claimed the lives of 346 passengers and crew members. Investigations revealed that Boeing installed flawed software known as maquillage, which overrode pilot controls and failed to provide adequate training or documentation for its use. Internal reports showed that engineers and safety officials raised concerns about the plane's design, but these warnings were ignored in favor of meeting deadlines and cutting costs. Although Boeing paid billions in fines and settlements, the company avoided significant criminal accountability, prompting outrage from victims' families and aviation safety advocates. The tragedy exposed a culture of negligence and profit-driven decision-making within Boeing, sparking global debates over regulatory oversight and corporate responsibility in the aviation industry. Number 11. Volkswagen Dieselgate scandal. In 2015, Volkswagen was exposed for installing software in millions of diesel vehicles to cheat emissions tests, allowing the cars to emit pollutants far exceeding legal limits. The company marketed these vehicles as environmentally friendly while their real-world emissions contributed significantly to air pollution and public health risks. The deception affected consumers worldwide and resulted in billions of dollars in fines and settlements. However, the financial penalties barely impacted Volkswagen's profitability, leading critics to argue that the company effectively bought its way out of accountability. The environmental and societal damage caused by Volkswagen's actions remains unaddressed, and the scandal has become a stark example of how corporations can exploit regulatory loopholes while avoiding substantial consequences. Number 12. Union Pacific Railroad Lac-Mégantic disaster. In 2013, a train carrying crude oil derailed in Lac-Mégantic, Canada, causing a series of explosions that killed 47 people and destroyed much of the small town. The disaster was linked to safety lapses, including the use of an insufficient number of brakes and inadequate staffing. Investigations revealed that the companies involved had prioritized cost-cutting over safety protocols, making the tragedy preventable. While settlements were paid to victims and their families, the companies avoided significant structural reforms or criminal accountability. The community of Lac-Mégantic was left to rebuild while grappling with the emotional and physical scars of the disaster. For many, the incident symbolizes the dangers of putting profits above public safety, as well as the failure of regulatory bodies to enforce stricter safety standards. Number 13. Purdue Pharma opioid crisis. Purdue Pharma, owned by the Sackler family, played a central role in the opioid epidemic that has claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands of Americans. The company aggressively marketed OxyContin as a safe and non-addictive painkiller, despite overwhelming evidence of its addictive potential. Purdue's sales tactics targeted vulnerable populations and downplayed the risks of dependency, contributing to a public health crisis that devastated families and communities. Although Purdue declared bankruptcy and paid billions in settlements, the Sacklers retained much of their wealth and avoided criminal charges. Critics argue that the penalties were insufficient given the scale of the devastation caused by the opioid epidemic. The Purdue Pharma scandal stands as one of the most egregious examples of profit-driven harm in modern history. Thanks for watching. If these stories shocked you, share this video to spread awareness about corporate accountability. And don't stop here, watch our next video on 7 Dark Secrets about Mother Teresa. See you there.